On July 20th, the world awoke to heartbreak. Malcolm Jamal Warner, who helped define a generation and gave birth to Theo Huxtable, was no longer with us. His decades-long career and lively enthusiasm were cut short at the age of 54 on what should have been a tranquil family vacation in Costa Rica. The earliest accounts that surfaced described a brave but heartbreaking tale. To protect his young daughter from a perilous rip, Warner had ventured into the ocean. Present, local authorities claimed that he paid the ultimate price while fighting against the merciless waters to save the person he loved the most. One among the first to arrive on the scene was Albert Leon, the head of the Atlantic Region's tourist police. He remained true to what he saw. He claimed that Warner and his 8-year-old daughter were in the water when they were both dragged into the flow of water. Nearby surfers sprang into action. On the beach of Coachella, chaos broke out. While the Red Cross miraculously provided on-site medical care for the young girl, Warner was pulled unconscious on shore. In his public speech, Leon was very explicit about it. Hospitalization was not even necessary for the child. The connotation was obvious. Malcolm had given up his life to rescue hers. Everywhere, media outlets seized upon that story. The last act of affection from a father. The tributes began to stream in. Actors, friends, and fans lamented the man they had grown up with on film. They saw Warner as a hero who had fought valiantly until the last. However, even though that account of events sounded reassuring, the official narrative quickly began to show flaws. And those fissures would eventually develop into something far more difficult to overlook. The world had just started to mourn Malcolm Jamal Warner's passing as a tragic act of fatherly love when a completely different account of what happened surfaced. And it came from a far more authoritative source. The Judicial Investigating Agency in Costa Rica is known as the OIJ, issued a public statement that flatly denied all of the police chief's assertions. They claim that when Warner drowned, his daughter wasn't even in the water. Completely different time frame was outlined in their cold and dispassionate statement. They said that earlier that day, Warner had been playing with his daughter close to the water's edge, but she had already returned to shore when she drowned. According to the OIJ, it wasn't this small he went into the ocean with a female. Together, the mature guy and his friend were ensnared in the rip current. The companion made it out. Warner didn't. The public's perception of what transpired was abruptly destroyed. According to one account, he perished while saving a youngster. According to the other, she was never in danger. Additionally, if the kid wasn't, why would the police chief insist differently while it was in the water? The Red Cross's response was even more disturbing. They attested to treating 2 grown males who were dragged out to sea. First, Warner's companion was sent in critical condition to a local facility. On the beach, Warner was given CPR, but it was too late. There wasn't formal reference to child treatment. The epic story suddenly started to fall apart. The facts no longer lined up, not because people wanted it to. Quickly, the questions began to flood in. This friend was who? Why was no one telling who he was? And why did various people have such conflicting versions of Warner's last moments? In the end, the OIJ made a ruling. Warner died from asphyxia after an accident involving submersion. It sounded so definitive, so definite. The true narrative, however, felt far from settled to those who were listening. Because there's a problem when 2 government agencies cannot agree on what actually happened. And the more you examine it, the more disturbing it gets. Now that the public is divided, all eyes were focused on the autopsy report. The one document that made clear the haze between 2 conflicting accounts of Malcolm Jamal Warner's last moments. Clinical, cold, and purportedly impartial. However, even that was unable to provide the clarification that many were seeking. 2 days after Warner's passing, on July 22nd, Costa Rican officials verified the findings. The reason for the death was formally classified as submersion-induced asphyxia. He drowned To put it another way, the cause of death was determined to be accidental. It was merely a tragic conclusion to a day at the beach. There were no indications of foul play, physical injuries, or drugs in his system. However, the discrepancies persisted despite everything being stated in black and white. They were magnified. Since the autopsy clarified his cause of death, the narrative remained shifting. Why had an experienced police chief appeared in front of cameras and said his daughter was in danger when she never was? When the Red Cross acknowledged that just 2 adult men were involved, why had he claimed that they had treated her? Was it an error, a miscommunication, or something far more deliberate? Some started to doubt the story of Warner dying while rescuing his daughter wasn't merely untrue. It was a calculated attempt to lessen the damage and pay tribute to a guy who was revered by everyone by portraying his last moments in the most honorable light. However, even noble eyes are significant. Although the autopsy closed the medical record, it unleashed a torrent of unsettling conjecture. No one was inquiring as to Warner's drowning. They wanted to know what initially got him into the water. And why did it seem that, depending on who was speaking, different versions of that time appeared? Stranger still, people closest to Warner were heartbreakingly mute about the paradoxes in the days after his death. There were no explanations or corrections, just sadness. And occasionally there was a discernible tension underlying the tributes as the facts began to come to light and something didn't feel quite right. The timeline's swirling headlines continued. To one thing was heartbreakingly constant despite the divide: the abundance of tributes to Malcolm Jamal Warner on social media, in TV shows, and in memorial posts. Former co-stars, friends, and admirers stepped forward to pay tribute to the man they grew up with both on and off television. Posting a plain black screen with the words, "I love you," along with a dove emoji, was Raven Simone, who had previously shared the screen with Warner on The Cosby Show. Just grief in its most unadulterated state, no description or caption. No press release could ever fully convey the impact of her silence. Kesha Knight Pulliam, who portrayed Warner's on-screen younger sister Rudy Huxtable, posted a sweet video of Malcolm strumming the bass guitar. Her remarks were profound. "I acquired an angel a week ago, but I lost my older brother." She concluded with a strong statement that made fans shiver. Our girls arrived. It was a tribute to the other Huxtable sisters, but it also felt protective, as if she were preparing for something bigger. Then came the once admired show's patriarch, Bill Cosby, who spoke in a resurrected interview. He recalled how seriously Warner took his profession and commended his commitment to the craft and his dedication to each scene. He never shied away from studying in his room, Cosby recalled. He made sure to put everything he had learned into practice. They were heartfelt words. The feeling is genuine. However, the fact that no tribute brought out the discrepancies made something feel strange beneath the adoration. Nobody responded to the conflicting accounts of the shore. It was unclear if the daughter was in the water. Nobody even admitted to being confused. And that silence began to seem louder than the sorrow to the viewers who were listening. Was it out of deference? Or a wish to preserve Warner's reputation? Or did the public not comprehend that more was being withheld? Fans who had previously accepted the heroic drowning story started to wonder if we were simply shown the version they wanted us to see as the days went by. And memorials evolved into questions. The internet did what it normally does as tributes avoided the obvious and official outlets went mute. As it dug further, what had started off as mild perplexity erupted into a full-blown maelstrom of conjecture. Theories exploded on Reddit forums. YouTube comments turned into battlefields. Once accepting the story at face value, fans were now making connections, locating beach footage, interpreting Costa Rican news stories, and closely examining each official statement. And the more they examined, the less sense there was in it. Why would a police officer chief too boldly assert that Warner's daughter was in the water? only to have the OIJ completely contradict him. Was it a case of damage control or misunderstanding? According to one scenario, Warner might have been swimming with a pal that the public wasn't allowed to know about. Maybe a well-known person or someone Warner wished to keep secret. Some conjecture that this enigmatic companion may have been connected to Warner's initial foray into the ocean. Others think the contradictory reports were a part of a conspiracy designed to protect the family from negative publicity or more serious legal repercussions. Was Warner going into the sea to protect someone? Was there an altercation, a miscommunication, or a snap choice that cost him everything? Subsequently, there were rumors that Warner had been acting oddly lately before his passing. Some admirers reported seeing him in Costa Rica and noticing that he appeared strained, preoccupied, or as if he was carrying something heavy. According to one tourist, they even heard him say, "I just need to keep her safe," over the phone. However, who was he referring to? A buddy, a partner, his daughter? Nothing could be confirmed. However, none of it was to be disregarded either. The fact that everyone around Warner stayed silent just made matters worse. The friend he went into the ocean with was not officially named. The timeline was not explained by any of the co-stars, and the supposition grew louder the more silence there was in the room, because fans begin searching for information when they believe they aren't being given the complete truth themselves. The mystery was further complicated by what they discovered later. Finally, a voice from Warner's past spoke up in a way that nobody had anticipated. A faint voice from Warner's past reappeared just as the dust was beginning to settle, shocking the already shattered fan base. The actress Bates is a lesser-known name to most people, yet she is recognizable to a heartbreaking homage was posted by early television fans. She did more than simply lament the loss. In what she considered this perverse industry, she lamented a guy she referred to as her sole real hero. Her post didn't adhere to the formal Hollywood condolence format. Sounded like an admission. "I received the heartbreaking news this morning that I've never had a true hero in this industry," she wrote. "The fact that I'm penning these things still amazes me." Malcolm, the last name I ever thought I would hear in this situation, is Jamal Warner's. However, it was more about what she didn't say than what she did say. How he died was not mentioned. No recounting of drowning incidents or beach scenery. Rather, her remarks had a strong undertone. She described how, at one point, Warner had protected her at a particularly trying period in her life. How, when no one else cared, his generosity had lifted her spirits. She didn't provide details, but she wasn't required to. Theories suddenly flared up once more. Was Warner protecting someone in his final moments? Fans started to wonder, not in a physical sense, but on an emotional level. Was there someone he was protecting from the press, the law, or worse? A completely different wave of suspicion was triggered by the twisted industrial line. Was Bates referring to mistreatment, scandal, or something that Warner had assisted her in escaping? Some admirers even wondered if Warner had been harboring a secret of his own that he never wanted to reveal. Just shadows, no proof, no affirmations. However, the post's genuineness was what really struck a chord. It wasn't a public relations statement. This was sorrow tinged with regret, purpose, and possibly even guilt. People were left wondering, did Warner take more than a family holiday? On his last trip to Costa Rica, did he pick that beach for a reason? That time? That friend? Although Bates' tribute left a spooky, lingering impression, it rehashed all of the questions it raised. What was carried to the afterlife by Malcolm Jamal Warner? Malcolm Jamal Warner was more than a mere performer. Theo Huxtable was his name. He was the millions of children looked up to their cool, smart big brother, the center of a program that used to bring families together across generations and living rooms. He was raised in front of the American public, and he did it with power, dignity, and humility. However, the globe is now faced with bewilderment in addition to loss. When he, saved his daughter from the sea. Did he really die a hero? Or was that a fabrication to conceal something we would never completely comprehend, or to protect someone else? Why were his last moments depicted differently by two official agencies? Why was his swimming companion never identified? And why? Have his closest friends and family members been so painfully silent about the inconsistencies? Warner appears to be protecting someone, even in death or something. The account of his last moments is a puzzle with missing pieces, but there is no denying that the loss is real and the agony is unbearable. The sounds of a man who carried more weight than anyone ever realized, as well as whispers and suspicions, permeate the eerie calm that remains. Perhaps the truth perished with him on the beach at Coachella that day. Or perhaps it's waiting out there. It's your time now. Do you think the official account of what happened is accurate? Do you believe there was a cover-up? Was Malcolm the one in danger all along? Or was he defending someone in his last hours? Leave a comment below with your opinions. Give this video to someone who still thinks that every accident has a reason. Someone who remembers Theo, or someone who remembers The Cosby Show. There is an important story to share. And thank you if you've read this far, because grieving is only one aspect of remembering someone. Refusing to ignore the facts they left behind is the key. Rest in peace, Malcolm Warner, Jamal. Even though you're no longer here, the questions you left behind continue to reverberate via each wave that struck that shore.